The emergency signal cut through the silence of deep space like a scream in the dark. Captain Daewon sat in his command chair aboard the exploration vessel Indomitable Spirit, watching the distress message play for the third time. On the screen, a creature unlike anything he had seen before looked directly at the camera with eyes that held the weight of extinction. The Valith were dying. Their star had begun its death throes early, and a massive radiation storm was sweeping across their homeworld. 3 months. That was all they had left before every living thing on their planet would be burned away by cosmic fire. "Captain, we should continue our survey mission," said Lieutenant Minho from the navigation station. Command was very clear about our orders. Daewon did not answer immediately. He watched the Valith representative on the screen, her translucent skin rippling with patterns of light that the computer translated as desperate hope. The Valith had sent this message to every major civilization in the galaxy. They were begging for help. They needed ships to evacuate their people or technology to shield their world. They had nothing to offer in return except their gratitude and their lives. Dr. Hana stepped closer to the captain's chair, her tablet displaying data about the Valith. They are a peaceful species. No military, no weapons. They have spent their entire existence creating art and philosophy. They have never fought a war, which means they have nothing anyone wants, said Minho quietly. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. In the galactic economy, value was everything. Species with rare minerals were protected. Those with strategic locations were defended. Those with powerful weapons were respected. But a species with only art and wisdom? The galaxy had no use for them. Daewon pulled up the response logs. The Valith had sent their plea to everyone. The Draxan Empire had responded first. Resource allocation does not permit intervention. Your request is denied. The Synthesis Collective had been more elaborate. Our protocols forbid interference in natural stellar events. To intervene would disrupt the cosmic balance. The Krovan Republic had been brutally honest. Your species offers insufficient strategic value. We decline. One by one, every major power had turned away. The Valith were alone. How many of them are there? Daewon asked. 4.2 billion, Hana replied. Mostly concentrated in underwater cities. They are mollusk-based life forms. They need specific environments to survive, and they have 3 months. Less now. 2 months and 26 days, the bridge fell silent. Every officer knew what the captain was thinking. They also knew what it would cost. The Indomitable Spirit was a science vessel, not a transport. They could maybe take a few hundred Valith aboard. What difference would that make against billions? Daewon stood up and walked to the main viewport. Outside, the stars burned with cold indifference. Somewhere out there, the Valith were watching those same stars, hoping for a miracle that would never come. He thought about Earth's history. Humanity had been the newcomers once, barely 200 years ago. They had stumbled onto the galactic stage with primitive, faster-than-light drives and weapons that made older species laugh. The other civilizations could have crushed humanity or ignored them completely. Some had argued for both options, but they had been given a chance. Not because humanity was valuable or strategic, simply because someone had decided that Earth deserved to exist. Set course for Valith space, Daewon said. Sir? Minho turned in his chair, eyes wide. You heard me. Full speed. Captain, that directly violates our mission orders. We were assigned to survey the outer rim, not... I know what our orders were. Daewon's voice was calm but firm. I am changing them. Hana smiled slightly. She had known the captain would make this choice. It was why she respected him. What do we do when we get there? Asked Minho. We cannot save them all. No, Daewon agreed. We cannot. But we can save some, and we can send a message to Earth. Let the politicians decide what humanity will do. The Indomitable Spirit changed course, its engines burning bright as it accelerated toward a doomed world. The crew worked in silence, each person processing what this decision meant. They could all face court-martial for this. Daewon could lose his command. But looking at the Valith message playing on repeat, none of them suggested turning back. 3 days later, they entered Valith space. The planet was beautiful even in its dying days. Vast oceans covered most of the surface, and the underwater cities glowed with bioluminescent light. Millions of Valith moved through the water like living stars. The radiation storm was visible on the scanners, a massive wave of death slowly crawling across the system. It had already sterilized 2 of the outer planets. Soon it would reach the homeworld. "We are being hailed," said the communications officer. On the screen appeared a young Veilith female. Her patterns of light flashed rapidly, and the translator struggled to keep up with her emotional state. "You came. Someone actually came. I am Captain Day One of Earth. We received your distress call." "Earth?" The Veilith's lights dimmed with confusion. "We sent requests to the major powers. The Draxon, the Synthesis, They all said no," Day One finished. "I know, but humanity says yes." The Veilith's entire body began to glow brighter. "You will help us evacuate. We will do everything we can. But I must be honest with you. My ship can only carry a few hundred of your people. I have sent a message to my homeworld requesting more ships. I do not know if they will come." "A few hundred is more than 0, the Veilith said, her patterns shifting to something the translator labeled as desperate gratitude. "We had accepted that we would all die here. If even a few survive to remember us, that is more than we dared hope." Day One felt a weight settle on his shoulders. "Tell me your name." "I am Yang. I am a scientist. I study the stars." "Well, Yang, I want you to start selecting people for evacuation. Prioritize the young and those with knowledge to preserve. We will take as many as we can fit." As Yang's image faded, Day One turned to his crew. "Send the message to Earth, full priority. Tell them everything." Hana helped compose the transmission. When it was ready, Day One stood before the camera and spoke the words that would change everything. "This is Captain Day One of the Indomitable Spirit. I am reporting from Veilith space. The Veilith people are facing extinction. Every major civilization has refused to help them. They are dying because they have nothing of value to offer except their lives and their culture. I am requesting immediate humanitarian intervention. If Command denies this request, I will proceed with evacuation anyway and face whatever consequences follow. But I will not leave these people to die alone." Day One out. The message was sent. Now they could only wait and hope that humanity would choose to be more than the galaxy expected. The message reached Earth 48 hours later. President G1 watched Captain Day One's transmission in her office, surrounded by her cabinet and military advisors. When it ended, the room erupted in argument. "This is madness," said the Secretary of Defense. "We cannot mobilize a fleet for every species in trouble. We have our own colonies to protect." "The cost would be enormous," added the financial minister. "We are talking about evacuating billions. The ships alone would drain our reserves for years." President Jiwan raised her hand for silence. She was a small woman, but when she spoke, people listened. "How long do they have?" Admiral Sungmin checked his tablet. "Less than 3 months now. Even if we sent every available ship, the logistics would be nearly impossible." "Nearly impossible is not the same as impossible," Jiwan said quietly. She stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Below, millions of humans went about their lives unaware that their president was about to make a decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. "What do we gain from this?" asked the Secretary of Commerce. "The Veilith have no resources, no technology we need. This would be pure charity." "Yes," Jiwan agreed. "It would be." She turned back to face them. "My grandmother used to tell me a story. When she was young, there was a terrible flood in her village. The water came so fast that families were trapped on rooftops. A man with a boat went house to house saving people. Someone asked him why he bothered because the people were poor and could not pay him. He said he did it because when the water rises, you do not ask who is worth saving. You save everyone you can reach." The room was silent. "The galaxy is watching us," Jiwan continued. "Every species will see what humanity does in this moment. We can be like the others, cold and calculating. Or we can show them what Earth believes, that every life matters. That civilization means helping those who cannot help themselves." "Madam President," Admiral Sungmin said carefully, "if we do this, there will be political consequences. The Galactic Council will see us as foolish. Our rivals will use this to weaken our position." "Let them," Jiwon said. "I would rather be seen as foolish than live with the knowledge that we let billions die, because saving them was inconvenient." 12 hours later, Earth's response shook the galaxy. President Jiwan addressed the United Earth government and, by extension, every species listening to human broadcasts. "We have received Captain Day One's message. The Veilith people are facing extinction, and the galaxy has turned its back on them. Humanity will not. As of this moment, I am authorizing the largest humanitarian mission in our history. Every available colony ship, every transport, every vessel that can be spared is hereby ordered to Valith space. We will evacuate every single Valith we can reach. We will do this not because it benefits us, but because it is right. The response from Earth was immediate. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Private shipping companies offered their vessels. Construction firms pledged resources. Within 3 days, a fleet began to assemble that would make history, but not everyone agreed. Opposition politicians called it a waste. Corporate leaders complained about the economic impact. Angry voices filled the media, demanding that humanity focus on its own interests. Yet public opinion swung heavily in favor of the rescue. Across Earth and its colonies, a simple message appeared on walls, screens, and clothing. We were the newcomers once. Someone gave us a chance. At the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Kyung-soo faced the fury of other species. The chamber was massive, filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. When Earth's decision was announced, the reaction was immediate and hostile. "This is economic suicide," declared the Draxan representative, his scaled face twisted in disbelief. "Humans waste resources on the worthless," added a Krovan delegate. The Synthesis Collective's holographic ambassador flickered with what might have been confusion. "Your species has chosen emotion over logic. This will lead to your decline." Kyung-soo stood calmly before them all. He was an older man, a career diplomat who had spent decades navigating galactic politics. He had expected this reaction. "My government's position is clear," he said. "We will help the Valith." "Why?" demanded the Draxan. "What do you gain?" "Nothing that you would understand," Kyung-soo replied. "We gain the knowledge that when we were tested, we chose compassion over convenience. We gain the respect of ourselves. Respect does not feed colonies or defend borders," the Krovan shot back. "No," Kyung-soo agreed, "but it defines who we are, and we have decided that humanity will be the species that helps, not the one that watches others die." The council erupted in debate, but Kyung-soo had said his piece. He returned to his station and sent a message to Earth. "They think we are fools. Good. Let them underestimate us." In Valith space, Commander Tae-yang arrived with the first wave of rescue ships. He led the Rapid Response Corps, humanity's elite disaster relief unit. His ships dropped into orbit, and his teams immediately began coordinating with Young and other Valith scientists. The scale of the task was terrifying. 4.2 billion Valith, 72 days. Even with the ships Earth was sending, it seemed impossible. "We need to establish evacuation priorities," Tae-yang said during the first planning meeting. Young and a dozen other Valith scientists attended via hologram, their lights flickering with stress. "How do we choose who lives and who dies?" Young asked, her patterns showing deep pain. "How do we tell families they will be separated? How do we decide which children are saved and which are left behind?" Tae-yang had no good answer. He had run rescue operations on a dozen worlds, but nothing of this magnitude. "We save as many as we can. We work every hour of every day, and we do not give up." Dr. Hana worked closely with Young to solve a critical problem. The Valith needed water-rich environments with specific temperature and pressure ranges. Human ships were not designed for this. They had to modify cargo holds, install water systems, and create temporary habitats. "Tell me about your people," Hana said one evening as they worked. "Not the logistics. Tell me who they are." Young's lights shifted to a warm glow. "We are artists, philosophers. We spend our lives trying to understand beauty and meaning. We have no concept of war. When two Valith disagree, they create art to express their feelings. The one whose art moves more people is considered correct." "That is beautiful," Hana said softly. "It is also why we are dying," Young replied, her lights dimming. "We have no weapons. No defenses. We never thought we would need them. The universe seems so vast and peaceful." "The universe is vast," Hana agreed, "but humanity has learned it is not always peaceful. That is why we build weapons, not to attack but to protect ourselves and, when necessary, to protect others." The evacuation began. Ships descended to the Valith cities, and thousands of refugees began the journey to safety. Families were separated. Ancient homes were abandoned. An entire civilization was being uprooted, and then the first complication arrived. A Draxan warship appeared at the edge of the system. Captain Daewon received the transmission. The Draxan captain was direct. "When the Valith abandon their world, their territory becomes available for claim. The Draxan Empire has filed the proper documents with the Galactic Council. We are here to ensure our claim is recognized. Daewon felt anger rise in his chest. You refuse to help them evacuate. Now you want to take their home? We are not violating any laws, the Draxan replied coldly. This is standard procedure. Daewon made a decision that would either be called heroic or an act of war. He positioned the indomitable spirit directly between the Draxan warship and the evacuation fleet. The human ship was smaller, less armed, and would lose any direct fight. Leave, Daewon said simply. You cannot stop us. Maybe not, but I can make you go through me first, and I promise you, Captain, that if you fire on this ship while we are conducting a humanitarian rescue, every human vessel in this galaxy will know what you did. Is claiming this empty system worth starting a war with humanity? The Draxan ship held position for 10 long minutes. Then slowly, it withdrew. Yang watched from the surface as the confrontation ended. She had never seen one species stand up to another like that. Your captain risked his ship for us. Yes, Hana said. That is what humans do. 50 days remained when Engineer Bora arrived with the main construction fleet. She stood on the bridge of her vessel, looking at the display showing the evacuation progress. Only 1.8 billion Valeth had been moved to safety. More than half the population remained on the dying world. We are not moving fast enough, she said to Admiral Sung Min, who had taken overall command of the operation. We are doing everything we can, Sung Min replied. He looked exhausted. The Admiral had not slept more than 4 hours in the past week. Every ship is running at maximum capacity. We have pilots flying triple shifts. Bora pulled up a holographic projection. I have an idea. It is crazy, and every expert I showed it to said it cannot be done. Tell me anyway. We stop trying to evacuate them to distant colonies. Instead, we build them a new home right here. She expanded the projection, showing a nearby star system. This system has a stable star and 3 gas giants. We construct massive orbital habitats around the giants, modular designs that can be built quickly and expanded over time. Sungmin studied the projection. How long would this take? 45 days if we use every construction ship, every resource, and every engineer humanity has. We would need to strip mining operations, pull ships from colony projects, and redirect supply chains across human space. That is impossible. Yes. Bora agreed with a slight smile. That is what everyone says. But I have been working with humans long enough to know that impossible just means no one has tried hard enough yet. Sungmin looked at the engineer for a long moment. Then he nodded. Send the specifications to Earth. Tell them we need everything. I will authorize it from this end. The message went out and humanity responded. Ships came from every colony. Mining vessels abandoned their operations. Construction platforms were dismantled and transported to Valeth space. Private companies donated materials. Engineers volunteered. The scale of the effort was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. General Hyunwoo arrived with military escorts. He was a hard man who had fought in the border wars and had little patience for sentiment. But even he understood what was at stake. We have a problem, he told Sungmin. 3 more species have sent ships claiming territorial rights. The Krovan have a battle group on the way. They see opportunity here. We are conducting a humanitarian operation, Sungmin protested. They do not care. To them, we are weak prey distracted by emotion. They think they can take what they want while we are busy saving refugees. Hyunwoo deployed the human military fleet in a defensive perimeter. It was not large enough to stop a determined attack, but it sent a message. The Valeth were under human protection. Small skirmishes began. A Krovan scout ship tested the perimeter and was chased off. Raiders tried to sneak past and steal Valeth technology from abandoned cities. Human patrol ships intercepted them. The situation was becoming dangerous. Dr. Hana made a discovery that changed everything. She was cataloging Valeth cultural data when she found something remarkable. The Valeth had been broadcasting into space for thousands of years. Not distress calls or military signals. Art, philosophy, music. They have been enriching the galaxy for millennia, Hana told Young. Your people's ideas have spread across hundreds of worlds. Scientists, artists, philosophers on other planets have been inspired by Valeth broadcasts. But no one acknowledged it, Young said sadly, because it had no economic value. That is going to change. Hana released the full archive of Valeth cultural transmissions publicly. She made sure every major media network, every academic institution, and every cultural center received it. The response was immediate. Artists across the galaxy began incorporating Veilith patterns into their work. Philosophers quoted Veilith thinkers. Musicians adapted Veilith compositions. Suddenly, billions of people who had never heard of the Veilith were discovering their beauty. Public opinion began to shift. On worlds that had ignored the Veilith distress call, citizens started demanding their government's help. It was not enough to send fleets, but it created pressure. The cold calculations of galactic politics were being challenged by something the power brokers had not expected: genuine public sentiment. Commander Taeyang faced his hardest mission yet. Deep in the radiation zone, in the most contaminated areas of the Veilith homeworld, thousands of elderly and sick Veilith remained. They could not travel quickly. Many assumed they would simply be left behind. "I need volunteers," Taeyang told his corps. "We are going into the hot zone. Radiation levels are lethal. Our suits will protect us for maybe 6 hours. Anyone who comes with me might not come back." Every single member of his team stepped forward. The mission was brutal. They flew transports through radiation that made their instruments scream warnings. They went building to building, carrying Veilith who were too weak to move themselves. The rescuers' suits began to fail. 2 team members collapsed and had to be dragged back to the ships by their friends. Taeyang found an old Veilith male in a flooded chamber. The creature's lights were dim, barely visible. "Leave me," the Veilith said through the translator. "I am not worth the risk." "That is not your decision," Taeyang replied. He lifted the Veilith gently. "Every life matters. That is what my species believes." They saved 12,000 Veilith from the hot zone. Half of Taeyang's team ended up in medical care with radiation sickness. 3 would never fully recover. But when asked if it was worth it, every single one of them said yes. The orbital habitats took shape. Bora pushed her teams mercilessly, and they responded with dedication that bordered on obsession. Construction crews worked until they collapsed. Supply ships made runs at dangerous speeds. The habitats grew day by day, massive structures that would house billions. A Draxan captain named Ralph watched from his warship. He had been ordered to wait and claim the system once the humans failed. But as the days passed, he found himself fascinated by what he was seeing. The Draxan Empire valued strength and efficiency. Emotion was weakness. Yet here were the humans pouring their wealth and lives into saving strangers. It should have been stupid. It should have led to their ruin. Instead, they were succeeding. Ralph watched human ships form a shield wall against his own empire's vessels. He saw construction crews work through exhaustion. He monitored the cultural awakening spreading across the galaxy as species discovered Veilith art. Something inside him began to crack. His orders were clear. Wait for the humans to fail, then take what was left. But what if they did not fail? 30 days remained. Then 20. The radiation storm accelerated, moving faster than predicted. Scientists revised their estimates. They did not have 20 days. They had 10. "That is not enough time," Bora said, staring at the data. "We need at least 15 more days to complete the habitats." "Then we work faster," Sung Min replied, though his voice was hollow. They were already working at maximum capacity. There was nothing left to give. President Ji-Wan addressed the fleet from Earth. Her face appeared on every screen in Veilith space. "I know you are tired. I know many of you believe we cannot finish in time. But I have seen what humanity can do when we refuse to accept defeat. You are not just building homes. You are showing the galaxy what we are capable of. You are proving that compassion and strength are not opposites. 10 days, that is all we need. 10 days to finish what we started," the fleet responded. Pilots who had been grounded for rest climbed back into their ships. Engineers who should have been in medical care returned to their posts. The construction platforms worked around the clock and the habitats grew, but everyone knew the truth. 10 days was not enough. They were going to fall short. On the surface of the Veilith homeworld, 500 million people waited for rescue that might never come. Yong stood in her city, watching the water around her glow with the lights of her people. They were scared but calm. The Veilith had accepted death before. If it came now, at least they would know someone had tried to save them. Above, the radiation storm crawled closer. The human fleet prepared for what might be their greatest failure. But deep in that fleet, Captain Daewon was having a conversation with Admiral Sungmin that would change everything. There is one more option, Daewon said quietly. We use the fleet itself as a shield. Admiral Sungmin stared at Captain Daewon as if the man had lost his mind. You want to use our ships as a radiation shield? Not want, Daewon corrected. Need. We position the military fleet between the storm and the evacuation routes. Our shields create a corridor of safety. It will buy us time. It will also destroy the fleet. Those ships will take damage that cannot be repaired. We could lose crews. I know. Daewon's voice was steady. But what else can we do? We are out of time and out of options. If we do nothing, 500 million Valith die. If we do this, maybe we save them. Sungmin was quiet for a long time. He thought about his career, about the ships under his command, about the thousands of personnel who had volunteered for this mission. Then he thought about the Valith waiting on the surface below, their lights slowly dimming as they accepted their fate. Send the plan to all ship captains, he said finally. No one is ordered to participate. This is volunteer only. Within an hour, every single military vessel in the fleet had confirmed they would form the shield. President Ji-won learned of the plan from her military advisors. They expected her to forbid it. The loss of so many ships would cripple Earth's defense capabilities for years. It would leave human colonies vulnerable. It was a massive strategic risk. Instead, she approved it immediately. Then she recorded a message that would be played to every ship in the fleet. You have volunteered to be the shield that protects those who cannot protect themselves. What you are about to do has never been attempted before. The cost will be high. Some of you will not survive. But know this. History will remember this moment. The Valith will remember, and humanity will know that when it mattered most, we chose compassion over calculation. We chose to be the civilization that stands between the innocent and death. You are all heroes. Bring them home. The fleet moved into position. 47 warships and cruisers formed a line between the radiation storm and the planet. Behind them, transports and construction vessels continued their desperate work. Captain Subin, a transport pilot, was one of thousands making continuous runs to the surface. She had already made 72 trips. Her ship was groaning under the stress. Warning lights covered her dashboard. Her co-pilot had passed out from exhaustion 3 hours ago, and she had strapped him into a chair and kept flying. Transport 7, you are ordered to dock for repairs, came the message from Fleet Command. Negative, Subin replied. I can make one more run. There are people down there. Your ship is failing. Then I will fly it until it does. She was not alone in this thinking. Across the fleet, pilots pushed their vessels beyond safe limits. Engineers performed repairs in real time while systems were still running. Medical teams treated patients in overcrowded bays while new refugees kept arriving. Scientist Dong Min worked in a laboratory aboard one of the shield ships. He was a physicist who specialized in energy fields. For 3 days he had been working on an idea so dangerous that his colleagues thought he was crazy. We can link all the ship shields together, he explained to Admiral Sungmin. Create a unified barrier using modified FTL cores. It would be much stronger than individual shields. What is the risk? 40% chance of a chain reaction that destroys the entire fleet instantly. Sungmin looked at the scientist. Dongmin was young, barely 30, with dark circles under his eyes from too many sleepless nights. And if it works, we might create enough protection to finish the evacuation. We might save everyone. The Admiral made his decision. Do it! The word spread through the fleet. What they were about to attempt was either genius or suicide. Engineers began linking the ship systems together, creating a network that had never been tested. One mistake, one miscalculation, and 47 ships would vanish in a ball of fire. On the Valith homeworld, Yang was helping with the final evacuations. She moved through her city one last time, looking at the buildings where she had lived her entire life. Every corner held memories. Every street was part of her identity. It is time, said a human soldier gently. We have to go. Yang took one final look at her home, then turned and followed the soldier to the waiting transport. As they lifted off, she watched her city disappear below. Other Valith crowded the viewports, watching their world fall away. Some were crying. Others simply dimmed their lights in silent grief. A synthesis collective observer named Lyra watched everything from her ship at the edge of the system. She was supposed to document the human's failure. The synthesis collective was certain that emotion would lead to disaster. They had sent Lyra to record the proof. But as days turned to weeks, Lyra found herself confused. The humans should have given up. The task was impossible. The cost was too high. Yet they kept working. They kept saving people. They kept refusing to accept defeat. She began broadcasting updates to the synthesis network. At first, her reports were clinical, analytical. But slowly, something changed in her transmissions. She stopped calling the humans' actions irrational. She started calling them remarkable. Other species began paying attention to Lyra's broadcasts. What had started as observation became something else. Species that had ignored the Valith crisis began to reconsider. A Krovan mining vessel appeared with supplies. A small Torvan medical ship offered assistance. They were not large contributions, but they represented a crack in the wall of galactic indifference. Rolth, the Draxan captain, made his decision on day 7. He had watched long enough. Against direct orders from his empire, he broke formation and moved his ship to join the human defensive line. Draxan vessel, what are you doing? Demanded the human fleet coordinator. Helping. Rolth replied simply. If you will have me. There was a pause. Then Admiral Sungmin's voice came through. Welcome to the line, Captain. Transmitting shield frequency now. The final day arrived. 500 million Valith remained on the surface. The habitats were 87% complete. The radiation storm reached its peak, a wall of death that would sterilize everything it touched. All ships activate unified shield network, ordered Sungmin. Dongmin pressed the activation key. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every ship in the line lit up as their shields merged into a single barrier. The energy field was visible to the naked eye, a shimmering wall of blue light stretching across space. The radiation storm hit the shield. The force was incredible. Ships groaned under the stress. Power systems redlined. On 12 vessels, shields began to fail. Hold the line, Sungmin shouted. Do not break formation. 3 ships exploded as their cores overloaded. 5 more lost all power and began to drift. But the others held. The shield held. Behind the protection, transports made their final runs. Subin brought her vessel down one last time. The ship was barely holding together, but she loaded the last group of refugees and lifted off. Her engines were failing, warning klaxons screamed. But she made it to the habitat ships and delivered her passengers safely. Then her ship finally gave out. The engines died completely, and Subin drifted in space watching the battle around her. Engineer Bora activated the last habitat module. Construction complete, she shouted. All habitats are operational. Begin final transfer, Sungmin ordered. All transports, get those people to safety. The evacuation entered its final hours. Ships raced against death, carrying the last Valith from the surface. The shield continued to hold, though more vessels were failing every minute. Commander Tae Young personally piloted the final transport. As he lifted off, he looked down at the Valith homeworld one last time. The oceans that had birthed a civilization were about to become lifeless, but the civilization itself would survive. All Valith are accounted for, came the report. Repeat, all Valith are accounted for. A cheer went up across the fleet, but there was no time to celebrate. The shield was failing rapidly now. Ships were exploding or losing power. They had to retreat. All vessels withdraw to safe distance, Sungmin ordered. The fleet pulled back, leaving the shield ships behind. Those vessels had taken such damage that many could not move under their own power. Rescue ships began tractoring them to safety. Captain Daewon watched from the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit as the radiation storm finally consumed the Valith homeworld. His own ship was damaged, life support failing, but he had stayed at his post until the end. Mission complete, he transmitted. All Valith accounted for. It was an honor. His ship's power failed. In the darkness, Daewon waited for rescue or death. Then a tractor beam locked onto his vessel. Rolth's Draxan ship was pulling him to safety. Looks like you humans need help sometimes too, Rolth said over the comm. Daewon smiled in the darkness. Thank you, friend. The last ship cleared the danger zone. The radiation storm swept across the Valith homeworld and a planet died. But its people lived. 6 months after the rescue, the galaxy looked different. The change was not visible in star maps or trade routes. It was deeper than that, written in the way species looked at each other and what they believed was possible. The Valith thrived in their new homes. The orbital habitats that Engineer Bora had designed were more than just living spaces. They had become something beautiful. The Veilith had filled them with their art, their light patterns creating displays that could be seen from space. They called the habitat network humanity's gift, and they made sure the galaxy never forgot what had been done for them. Captain Daewon recovered from his injuries in a hospital ship. He expected to face court-martial for disobeying orders. Instead, President Ji-won herself came to visit him. She pinned humanity's highest honor on his uniform while he lay in the hospital bed. "You started something that changed us all," she told him. "Every person who volunteered, every ship that flew, every life that was risked, it all began with your decision to not look away." Daewon was promoted to admiral. The indomitable spirit, once left for dead in space, was repaired and renamed. It was now called the Indomitable Hope, and it would become the flagship of something new. The cost had been terrible. Humanity had lost 42 ships completely. 89 more were so damaged they could never serve in combat again. 18,000 people had died during the rescue. Thousands more were injured or sick from radiation exposure. Earth mourned them as heroes. On every human world, monuments were raised. But the greatest monument was built by the Veilith themselves. In the center of their largest habitat, they created a living memorial. It was a vast garden where bioluminescent plants grew, and written in light across its surface were the names of every human who had given their life for the rescue. The memorial could be seen from space, a constant reminder of what had been sacrificed. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. The chamber was in chaos. 17 species had submitted applications to join something that humanity had proposed, the Humanitarian Alliance. It was a coalition dedicated to protecting and preserving all sentient life, regardless of strategic value or economic worth. The traditional powers were furious. "This undermines the established order," the Draxan Empire's representative declared. "Species are protected based on their contribution to galactic stability. And who decides what counts as contribution?" Ambassador Kyung-soo asked calmly. "The Veilith contributed art, philosophy, and beauty for thousands of years. But because it could not be bought or sold, you deemed it worthless. How many other species have we overlooked?" The debate raged for hours, but the momentum was undeniable. Public opinion across the galaxy had shifted. Citizens who had never questioned their government's cold calculations now demanded better. The rescue of the Veilith had shown that another way was possible. The Draxan Empire faced its own crisis. Ralph's defection had inspired others. When he had chosen to help the humans instead of following orders, he had planted a seed. Other Draxan officers began questioning the Empire's values. Why did they only respect strength? Why was compassion considered weakness? A civil movement grew within Draxan space. They called themselves the New Scale, and they argued that true strength included protecting those who could not protect themselves. The Draxan government tried to suppress them, but the movement spread. Ralph became a symbol, proof that even the most rigid thinking could change. Ralph himself joined the Human Defense Forces as a liaison officer. He worked aboard the Indomitable Hope, training human crews in Draxan tactics while learning human values in return. It was strange at first. Humans were so emotional, so willing to risk everything for abstract ideals, but Rolf found himself respecting them more each day. The Synthesis Collective underwent perhaps the most dramatic change. Lyra's broadcast had reached every node in their network. The collective operated on pure logic and algorithm, making decisions based on calculated outcomes. But the Veilith rescue had revealed a variable they had never properly considered: the unpredictable power of compassion-driven action. Their algorithms had predicted the rescue would fail. The logistics were impossible. The costs were too high. Emotional decision-making should have led to disaster. Yet humanity had succeeded against all mathematical probability. The Synthesis Collective did what it did best. It analyzed the data. They studied every aspect of the rescue, breaking down what had made success possible. Their conclusion shocked their own network. Compassion was not a flaw in decision-making. It was a multiplier that enhanced cooperation, inspired effort, and created outcomes that pure logic could never achieve. They began incorporating compassion variables into their decision-making matrices. It was revolutionary. For the first time in their history, the Synthesis Collective started making choices based on factors beyond pure efficiency. President Ji-won addressed the Galactic Council 3 months after the rescue. The chamber was packed. Every species wanted to hear what humanity would say. She stood at the podium, a small figure facing the assembled representatives of hundreds of worlds. You asked why humanity would bankrupt itself for strangers. You called us emotional, irrational, wasteful. Some of you predicted we would collapse from the cost. Others said we would regret our choice. She paused, looking around the chamber. But we have learned something that you forgot. Civilizations are not measured by their weapons or their wealth. They are not judged by how much territory they control or how many resources they extract. They are measured by who they choose to become when no one is watching, when there is no profit to be gained, when it would be easier to look away. The Vaylith needed someone to stand for them. Every major power in this galaxy turned away. We are proud that we were the ones who answered, and we are proud that our choice has inspired others to reconsider what civilization truly means. The Humanitarian Alliance was formally established 1 week later. Humanity stood as founding members alongside the Vaylith. The Torvin, a species known for their medical expertise, joined next. Then came the surprise. A reformed faction of the Draxan Empire, led by officers who had been inspired by Ralph's choice, joined as well. The Alliance's charter was simple. Every member pledged to respond to humanitarian crises regardless of political or economic considerations. They would protect endangered species. They would provide disaster relief. They would stand as proof that power could be used for more than conquest and profit. Not every species joined. The major powers held back, watching and waiting. But 17 species signed the charter in the first month. That number grew to 23 by the end of the year. Dr. Hana and Yang continued working together. They created a project to catalog and preserve the cultural heritage of endangered species across the galaxy. It became one of the most important scientific endeavors of the age. Hundreds of species that had been ignored suddenly found their art, music, and philosophy being studied and celebrated. Engineer Bo-Ra led the construction of similar habitat networks for 3 other species facing environmental collapse. The techniques developed during the Vaylith rescue became standard across human space. Humanity became known not just as warriors or traders, but as builders who could create homes for the homeless. Commander Tae Yang recovered from his radiation sickness, though it left permanent damage. He could no longer serve in the field, so he took a position training the next generation of rescue specialists. He taught them that the most important missions were often the ones where success seemed impossible. The fleet that had formed the shield was never forgotten. The damaged ships were not scrapped. Instead, they were converted into a memorial fleet, orbiting Earth as a reminder of what had been sacrificed. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see the scarred vessels that had stood between innocence and death. 1 year after the rescue, Admiral Daewon stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Hope. His new mission was about to begin. The ship had been refitted and was now the flagship of the Humanitarian Alliance's Rapid Response Fleet. His crew was no longer purely human. Vaylith, Draxan, Torvin, and others had joined, creating something unprecedented. A truly diverse crew united by shared values rather than species loyalty. Course plotted. Admiral, reported his navigation officer, a young Vaylith named Kale. We have reports of a colony in distress in the Outer Rim. What kind of distress? Unknown. They sent a general call for help, but no one has responded yet. Daewon smiled. Then I guess it is our turn to answer. Helm, take us to FTL. The Indomitable Hope jumped to faster than light travel, disappearing from Earth orbit. As it did, a holographic display showed the growing network of the Humanitarian Alliance. Dozens of species, hundreds of worlds, all connected by the simple idea that humanity had refused to abandon, that every life had value, that helping others was not weakness but the highest form of strength, that civilization meant standing for those who could not stand for themselves. In the Vaylith habitats, a young Vaylith child sat in a garden working on an art piece. Her bioluminescent patterns created a scene, a human hand reaching down to lift up a Vaylith. Below the image, light spelled out words in both languages, the day the galaxy learned what heroes look like. The image was transmitted across the galaxy,